I still remember the last words my brother ever said to me. "You're an embarrassment in that uniform, Amara. A soldier who's never seen real action isn't a soldier at all. You're just a costume." Everyone at the table laughed. My mother looked away. My father just kept eating like he hadn't heard anything at all. That was the kind of family I grew up in, the kind where silence was easier than standing up for someone. My name is Amara. I was 31 years old, and for 6 years, I had served in a branch of the military that no one in my family understood or respected. They thought I filed paperwork somewhere behind a desk. They thought I was hiding from a real life. What they didn't know, what I was never allowed to tell them, was the truth about what I actually did. I worked in a classified intelligence unit. My job was quiet, careful, and dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with guns or battlefields. I tracked financial crimes tied to national security. I built cases that regular people never heard about until they saw the headlines years later. But I couldn't say any of that. Not to my brother Daniel, not to my parents, not to anyone at that dinner table who thought my silence meant I had nothing to be proud of. Daniel was the golden child, charming, successful, or so everyone believed. He ran an import-export business that seemed to grow overnight, expensive cars, a mansion he worked hard for. My parents adored him. I was the quiet daughter in a uniform nobody respected, the one who missed holidays for training, the one who never explained herself. That night, after the laughter died down and I sat there swallowing my humiliation in silence, I told myself something I had told myself many times before. One day, they'll understand. One day, the truth will speak louder than their mockery. I just didn't know how soon, or how painfully, that day would come. Because 3 months later, my brother would be gone. And the very call I made, the one connected to my job, the one I could never explain to my family, would be the reason federal agents stood at his funeral. But what I didn't know that day, sitting quietly at that table absorbing his insults, was that my brother's success was never what it seemed. And somehow, without even realizing it, my work, the work he mocked, was already circling closer to his world than either of us could have imagined. 2 months after that dinner, a name crossed my desk during a routine review. A shell company, suspicious international transfers, falsified shipping records tied to a business under investigation for money laundering. The company's name was Solvane Trading Group. My hands went cold when I saw it. Solvane Trading Group was my brother's company. I told myself it had to be a coincidence, a shared name, a mistake in the database. But the deeper I looked, carefully, quietly, the way my training demanded, the more the pieces lined up in a way that made my chest ache. Daniel wasn't just involved. He was at the center of it. For weeks, I carried that secret like a stone in my stomach. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every family dinner, every vacation, every time he flashed his watch or bragged about a new car, wondering how much of it was built on lies, wondering how much my parents' pride in him was built on something rotten underneath. I wanted to warn him. God, some nights I wanted to call him and beg him to stop, to fix whatever he had gotten tangled in before it swallowed him whole. But I had taken an oath. My job wasn't about protecting my family's comfort. It was about protecting the truth, no matter how much it broke my own heart to uncover it. I remember calling my closest friend from the unit, my voice shaking as I whispered, "What do I do when the person I'm investigating is my own blood?" She said something I never forgot. "You do your job, Amara, because if you don't, someone else will. And they won't care about protecting what's left of your family." So I did my job. I gathered evidence. I flagged the case properly, stepping back from it personally so there could be no accusation of bias, letting trained investigators take it from there. I watched, helpless and heartbroken, as the case built itself. Not because of revenge, not because of anger over a cruel comment at a dinner table, but because the truth simply refused to stay hidden. Daniel's world was unraveling, and he had no idea his own sister already knew. The final call came on a Tuesday evening. Not one I made in anger, one I made because it was my duty. I confirmed details, provided clarity when asked, and stepped aside as the wheels of justice moved forward on their own. 3 days later, everything my brother built collapsed, but not the way anyone expected. Daniel was arrested on a Thursday morning. I wasn't there. I heard about it the same way the rest of my family did, through a frantic phone call from my mother, her voice breaking as she said words I never imagined I'd hear about my own brother. Fraud, laundering, seizure of assets. I said nothing about what I knew. I let the truth speak for itself, the way it always does eventually. 3 weeks later, Daniel died. A heart attack, the doctors said, brought on by the unbearable stress of watching his empire crumble around him. At his funeral, federal agents stood quietly near the back, closing out the final pieces of a case that no longer had anyone left to answer for it. My mother turned to me that day, her eyes red and hollow. "Did you know something about this, Amara?" I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I told a partial truth wrapped in mercy. "I knew he was in trouble, Mom. I wish I could have stopped it before it got this far." I didn't tell her everything. Some truths are too heavy to hand to a grieving mother. Some things I will carry alone, the way soldiers often do. Standing at that funeral, in the same uniform Daniel once mocked as a costume, I finally understood something. I never wanted revenge. I never sought to destroy my brother. I simply refused to let silence protect a lie any longer, even when that lie belonged to someone I loved. The people who once laughed at me that night now looked at me differently. Not because I gained power over them, but because they finally saw what my silence had always been protecting: dignity, duty, and truth, even when it cost me everything. I walked away from that funeral not with triumph, but with peace, because in the end, this was never about proving I was right. It was about honoring something greater than pride, the quiet, unglamorous work of doing what's right even when no one claps for you, even when the people closest to you never understand. My brother called me a useless soldier, but it was that same uniform, the one he mocked, that carried me through the hardest truth of my life with grace instead of hatred. And that, I've learned, is what real strength looks like.